This is very recent. You may have read it in the news. On December 23rd, a man disappeared from our Royal Caribbean cruise. There's a lot of speculation and rumor among the passengers. Many have claimed contact with the guy or saw him minutes before his disappearance. Hundreds of passengers were on deck, straining to see in the dark and scan the black ocean with the giant searchlights as we sat dead in the water. Search craft were working grid patterns, and all the while the passengers told stories of what happened. But I know they knew nothing, as I saw what happened, and I'll never forget that chilling nightmare. Vision of the Seas can carry 2,500 passengers and features a rock climbing wall, outdoor movie screen, and swimming pools. It's an awesome ship. We were sailing to the Bahamas and were 127 miles east of Charleston, South Carolina, when the incident occurred, according to Coast Guard tracking. Now, it isn't uncommon for a passenger to go missing and have fallen or jumped overboard. Something like 10 overboard is said to happen every year. Most are drunk, some are unhappy people, and then there are the murders where a newlywed husband tosses his bride into the sea in a fit of rage or for an insurance claim. Who knows why some of these happen? But here is my first-hand recounting of this terrifying event. It was a little after 8, as I remember. My family had a late dinner and wanted to socialize in the lounge. For some reason, I felt slightly melancholy. Maybe because I was missing my friends at home who were going to see a movie together and have pizza afterward. I was on this cruise my parents had planned. I was enjoying the cruise. I just was sad to not be with my friends that night. So I walked out on the deck to brood a little by myself. I was leaning over the deck rail to watch the ocean below and look for bioluminescence in the bow wave. It was hidden by a shadow in a quiet spot. There were no other passengers on the deck. I was pretty zoned out in my own little world of night sky and black sea when I heard angry voices. I didn't move away from the railing. I just lifted my head slightly to look. What I saw frightened me. I froze, not daring to breathe. 5 men had pinned a man to the deck rail and were angrily speaking to him in hushed tones. I wasn't far away and could hear the words, "Pay up, we're gonna toss you." I could see the man struggling, but the 4 others crowded him so tightly he couldn't move. The 5th man who attacked had disappeared. The guy said, "So toss me. The MOB will know the instant I hit the water, and the ship will rescue me." Then I heard one of the attackers say, "Not your lucky day. This ship doesn't have a man overboard alarm. You're going to sleep with the fishes." The 5th man who had disappeared returned with 2 bags filled with something, I don't know. They looked heavy by the way he carried them. He tied one onto each leg with shipping tape wrapped around several times. The first guy said, "Last chance. What's it gonna be?" The guy stopped struggling and laughed. "Come on, fellas, we were just having fun. You're not gonna do this. Let me go. We can play again tomorrow. I'll get some money, I promise." Then the first guy said, "You're a cheat. Toss him, fellas." And to my sheer terror, they did. I was shaking so hard I almost fell onto the deck, but I hung onto the railing so tight, crying inside, suppressing all sound. I was so afraid they would see me. I was panicking that they would turn, walk in my direction, and find me. My head was going to explode. Had I witnessed a murder? The 5 spat over the rail and said, "Bon voyage." To my relief, they turned the other direction and entered a door back into the ship. My family says I have an overactive imagination, and I'm a great storyteller, and I always have been. So the rumors with the passengers will persist. Was it a man overboard, or was it a murder? My innocence was destroyed in a chilling nightmare that happened when I was 17. I was that wide-eyed, trusting 17-year-old who dreamed of that fairy tale life and truly believed it would fall from the stars in a romantic adventure in a faraway land. I'm an only child of an older mother and father, and we lived a magical life in Pound Ridge, New York. It's a very safe, upper-income area where kids still run freely. People are friendly, and you can stop and talk with almost anyone. My clean and bright school teaches us that if you can dream it, you can be it. That dream does come true, but that isn't what happened to me. We took a New Year's Eve cruise from Fort Lauderdale, stopping in San Juan, Tortola, and St. Kitts. Exotic destinations for a 17-year-old who hasn't left the USA. The cruise brochure showed romantic evenings dancing on deck under Caribbean stars. Even though I was with my parents, I still dreamed of a magical sea cruise where true love would find me. But that isn't what happened. I'm lucky to be alive. Here's my story. The first 2 nights were okay, mainly with my mom and dad and the other voyagers assigned to our dinner table. The waiter at our table was always the same. He was in his late 20s, and he was very handsome. He saw my plight of being trapped with my older parents and the older 2 couples. He made me laugh, and we played an eye game that lured me in. He was exceptionally attentive and, with great flourish, would seat me at the table and flick my napkin to place on my lap. That evening, I went to the ship's bow to secretly reenact the Titanic scene where Rose and Jack reached out their arms over the sea. As I dreamily stretched out my arms with my head tilted back to watch the night sky, I felt an arm reach around me, and a man's voice whispered in my ear, "Isn't this magnificent? It's just to die for." I recognized the voice of the waiter and turned around. He still held me way too close. I looked up into his eyes, and they weren't the same twinkling eyes in the ship's dining room. They were absolutely dead. He pushed himself against my body and kissed my neck, not romantically, but more like a lion feasting on an antelope carcass. I was terrified. I tried to push him away, but he only gripped me tighter. I screamed, and he slapped me so hard I went dizzy and passed out. A second later, he lifted me up off the deck in his arms and whispered, "There is no love in this world. You and I will have it in the next." I shrieked with a terrifying realization he was going to throw me into the Black Sea to be crushed by the bow wave. He was going to jump in this death embrace. He had both of his legs over the railing and was dragging me up with him. I twisted and kicked, but his grip was too strong. I was fighting and shouting, "Stop!" I felt his body fall away, pulling me with him over the rail. Then my body jerked back as 2 crewmen grabbed my legs and held firm as the waiter lost his grip and fell into the blackness without me. The crewman lifted me up. I hear, "You're safe." I cried uncontrollably. We flew home from Tortola's airport, not continuing the cruise. The waiter wasn't known to have had psychiatric problems, so this was a mystery. His body was never recovered, presumed lost at sea. He couldn't have survived the fall and swam to the nearest island 2 miles away, I was assured by the Tortola police. What causes people to lose control and go nutso? Family stress, work tension, jealousy, fearfulness, rage, or simply cabin fever? I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know what makes someone go violently Looney Tunes, but I've got a story of a guy on our Alaskan cruise that did, and it is terrifying. My new husband and I booked a honeymoon cruise on an Alaskan cruise ship departing from Vancouver. We were married in Seattle, Washington, and drove the 2.5 hours to Vancouver to board a 14-day cruise. We took the luxurious honeymoon suite. Our first 14 days together in life's adventure would be memorable and spoil us rotten. We departed Vancouver in heavy fog, but that didn't bother us. We weren't exactly watching the scenery. We were pillow fighting, playing, and making love like it was our first time, which it was, Mom, if you're reading this. I don't even know the ship's itinerary, just that the scenery and whale spotting were to be spectacular nature. The ship's food was renowned for its fresh seafood and endless buffet. We didn't see any scenery for the first 7 days as we were enveloped in fog and rain the entire time. We ate and drank and watched movies in the theater. We gambled, worked out in the ship's gym, and swam in the indoor pool. The wind came up the following 5 days, and the sea swells were enormous. Half the passengers were seasick. My husband and I took Dramamine and were fine. Most passengers stayed in their staterooms, and few made it into the restaurant for lunch or dinner. On that 12th night, we ate dinner in a lonely restaurant and returned to our suite early, planning to take a double bath in the sloshing garden tub. It's fun floating in a big tub together and being tossed by the ocean. We were laughing and having a great time. Then we heard a loud knock on the suite door. I asked my husband, "Did you order champagne or something, my dear? You are always a surprise." He said, "No, someone must be knocking. The wrong room. Just ignore it." We got out of the tub, toweled off, put on the robes the ship provided, and climbed into bed to read. Then again, the knocking at the door comes. This time it was more of a banging with some urgency. "Ignore it and give me a kiss," said my husband, but I couldn't. I got out of bed and peeked through the peephole in the cabin door. This saved our lives. As I looked through the peephole, I saw a man with white hair, well-dressed in cruise wear. He was perfectly put together, except he was covered in blood. His pressed shirt was dripping in gore and blood. I couldn't take my eyes off him through that peephole. He raised his fist and looked as if he was looking directly into my soul as he pounded the door. He grabbed the handle and was furiously trying to open it. I screamed for my husband, who had already run to my side and was peering through the peephole, shouting, "Get out of here! This isn't your room!" The man was now crashing into the door with his whole body weight. We thought the door would splinter from the onslaught. We both put our backs to the door to hold him off. This continued for 5 minutes before we heard other voices loudly shouting in the corridor. We could hear an authoritative voice shouting, "Down on the floor!" My husband peeked again and said, "Ship security is here." In a few minutes, security came to speak with us. As it turns out, the man was in the VIP suite next to ours. His wife was found stabbed multiple times with a steak knife from the dinner delivered to their room. After she was butchered, he, for some unknown reason, came over to our room. When he was detained at our door, he was still clutching the steak knife he had used on his mutilated wife. I'm sure if I had opened that door without looking, our honeymoon would have ended tragically. He surely would have diced us.
Subscribe